Hello again, Steve here with a few thoughts on my first ever traffic ticket in my life that I can remember. I know I've gotten a couple parking tickets way back when, and I've been pulled over before for a warning, going too fast or something like that, supposedly. But this one was funny actually because I was driving on a highway that the average speed is about 110. And coming this way, coming towards me, was a cop. So he was going at, must have been about 100 as well. So the difference between us was 200 kilometers an hour. And it wasn't a bright sunny day. In fact, it was kind of cloud cover and stuff. It's hard to see into people's windows. I wouldn't be able to see into his window very well anyway. But I was talking on my cell phone. And I just didn't bother anything. I just kept talking. And a few minutes later, 30 seconds later, whatever, I see these lights in my rearview mirror. I pull over, set the phone down, and he says that he saw me talking on a cell phone. So I found it was quite interesting. He wrote me up a ticket for that. It was $300 or $400 or something. I'm not sure why. What was interesting though was it took, first of all, it took him about 50 minutes to write up a stupid thing, which is probably on a program that he has input some stuff into. So that was a giant waste of time. And he wouldn't show his ID. I asked him his ID. He wouldn't show that. He wouldn't show a business card. He wouldn't tell me his name. He has no name badge on. He showed me his badge number 560 Saskatoon Police Services. If you're out there, badge number 560. I don't think you're not supposed to. I think you're supposed to let me know who you are, but you know, you wouldn't tell me anything. But I was asking him questions. I said, I want to see your ID. I want to see the plate number on your car, this and that. Wouldn't give me any of it, right? But of course he had a gun, so I wasn't going to, escalate anything. But what was interesting is that at a certain point, I was just asking him questions. Finally he said, "Are you a free man on the land?" So at that point I smiled at him. I said, "What? A what?" He said, "A free man on the land." I said, "What is that?" And he actually started to soften up. He sort of cracked a smile and stuff like that. He started to explain to me, he said, it's these people who think that that jurisdiction doesn't apply to them, and they're out there thinking they can do this and do that and not have to comply to this and that. I just let him start talking. But what was interesting is that within 30 seconds maybe of that, it was like 4 more cop cars showed up. And there was these people lurking in the background, hanging around with their, hands on their guns and stuff. And I'm thinking, what? But it was really funny. And he came back a few times and asked a few questions like, "Where do you live?" And I said, "Well, I'm living here, right? You can see me." "What is your address?" I said, "You mean where I'm living?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, what's the address here?" I don't know, I'm here on the side of the road. What's the address? "Where is your residence?" I just kept asking him. I asked him questions, right? At a certain point, he started calling my questions silly and unnecessary and, of course, non-arguments, right? And, of course, that was where he was getting the inclination as to this whole free man thing, whatever it is. And I didn't get into too much with him at all. I just asked questions. I actually had a lot of fun. And I actually think that he kind of connected with me in a way, because at the end of it, well, he came back to the car and I learned something about this. It sort of made sense, but I learned something. This is a tip actually, maybe, that people could try. But I don't think none of it works. They don't really care about their own rules. But it's just interesting the way they work on voodoo magic kind of thing. They think that there's voodoo and so on, and they're creating contracts. And they think there's a contract, but he's got a gun and he's telling me you have to do this and you have to do that. And then they somehow claim along, after the fact, if I was to make an issue of it, "Oh, but you did this and did that." No, he had a gun. I didn't. I asked him if that gun was loaded and so on. And so I wanted to make that point, right? I want to make the difference between him and I. And it was interesting because at the end he had this long paper. His tickets are different now. I guess I hadn't seen a ticket in so long. And it's all just computer screen, computer printed. He explains it to me and all that stuff. You can pay here, you can go to court, and so on. And of course, he gave me the driver's license back for it, which he had a big issue with because he didn't know where I lived and so on. And he gave me the registration back. And that was what confounded him also, because the truck was in somebody else's name, and the driver's license was from British Columbia, and I was in Saskatchewan and didn't know where I lived and all this. But I should have, but I had closed the window quite narrow. So he started putting this paper in the window afterwards. I said, take the paper out of there. But he kept shoving it in, and I should have just wound the window up. Because as soon as it touched me, he said, oh, it's touched you, you've been served. See, that's the voodoo they play with, right? So I just rolled it out and I chucked it back out the window. I said, I don't want your garbage, right? So then he says, well, I'll have to write you up a ticket for littering. And I think I made the comment at that point, well, you're the one who threw the litter into my car. Like, fuck, I don't want the litter in my car. Leave it, you can have it. So then he says, well, I'm going to have to write you a ticket up for littering. I said, well, what am I going to do with that? So are we going to just throw litter in and out of our, you're going to throw litter into my car and throw it back out, we're going to play this game? And he said, well, I'll have to arrest you for obstruction, I guess. I said, well, buddy, you know what? I'm not here to tell you what to do. And then he says, that's what I've been waiting for this whole time. I said, what? You've been waiting for me to tell you what to do? What's that all about? Then he says something like, well, that's what I thought you people did. So then I finally said to him, I said, buddy, are you going to arrest me or you're not? He said, no. I said, well, I'm going to go then, right? Oh, no, that was the time we started discussing the guns. He started saying, well, you this and you that. And I said, well, you gave me your driver's license or whatever. And I said, well, dude, you have a gun, don't you? I don't have a gun. Does that have bullets in it? He said, yeah, but what happened? I need this gun because if somebody starts shooting at me, I got to shoot back. And I said, okay, that means you're not going to use it on me, are you? So what are you going to do if I just start my truck and start driving? He says, well, go ahead. So I go ahead and I see him behind me picking up the paper on the highway. So, no, it was fun though. It was a lot of fun. And it's more indication that I'm just out. I'm out of the system. It's done. It's over with. And, I'm going on a walk, and I prefer walking for the most part anyways. And I'm done. I'm just done. And, they can, to hell with it, right? I'm not going to bother anymore. And I was kind of grateful for it afterwards that it happened, because it's a reminder that I'm out. I'm not dealing with it anymore. And it was also a good experience because the guy was a human being. I looked into his eyes, and there was probably a soul in there. He had I think he was deluded and so on, but he seemed like a fairly decent young guy doing his job. But just where he was, and he'd been told about this free man on the land and stuff and everything. And how did he know about that? Well, obviously they're teaching him shit like that, and whatever that is to him, I don't know what it is, but it's just it was funny. It was really funny, and at the end of it, there was a 50-minute waste of time, of course. But I learned something, and I'll think about it again and how I could have done better. And but I lost the hubris. I didn't come up with the hubris, and I sort of played it with humorously, and like whatever you want to. Here you go, And it was interesting because we talked a little bit about who actually owns this driver's license. Like if I got to give it to you, then it can't be mine, right? Like I even said to him, I said, okay, this pen here, right? We agree this is my pen, right? Because, well, can you take it from me, or can you demand the pen from me? He says, no, but you can demand this from me. So then this can't be mine, then, right? They started talking about the Highway Traffic Act and this, that, and act, and other act, and so on, and this is the basis of it. And I kept asking him, like, well, who's that? Where's that come? Who made that? And so on. And he was thinking a little bit, He was thinking a little bit. And even at the end, he was talking about how these rules and that rules, and I was referring it to as your rules. Yeah. He said, well, they're not just my rules. And I just mentioned, well, you're the one who's talking about them, dude. I never brought up any rules or acts or legislation, statutes. He kept talking all about that. And he kind of just paused, and I think he realized that it was him who was talking about it, not me, right? Or whatever. It was funny. I'll think about it for a while and, you know, just let it go. You know, it's just somebody wanted to do business with me with a gun, and, you know, might be warrant out for my arrest or something. But so what? I mean, it's all an experience. It's, you want to live once, might as well live on the edge, right? Live in the game rather than play the game. Live in the game of life, and see what comes of it. So when you lose the fear, it doesn't matter, right? It's like the Buddha. One time he was, apparently the story went was, there was a murderer, mass murderer in the neighborhood, and everybody was afraid of the murderer. And nobody would approach the murderer, of course, because they were terrorized by him. If you approach the murderer, he'd kill you. So he came to the Buddha, or the Buddha came to him, I forget what it was, and the Buddha just treated him like anybody else. Talked to him and said, and the guy was amazed. He said, well, why would you talk to me? Nobody else will talk to me. I'm afraid I'll cut their head off. You know, what would you do if I cut my head off? Or what would you do? What would you think if I said I was going to cut your head off? He said to the Buddha, something like that. And the Buddha was something like, well, you know what? Far be it for me to tell you what to do. You know? And the guy was dumbfounded. He was completely dumbfounded. He dropped everything at that moment. So I think there's something to be said for this. And when I left that cop on the side of the highway, I looked at him in his eyes, and I said to him, you know what? Be nice to people. Be nice to people. He kind of smiled. It was like, he must be new at this or something, because he didn't seem to be completely glazed over and evil. There's a connection there. That's important, I think. I think it's important to at least attempt to connect with everybody. We're all brothers and sisters on this planet. Anyway, sharing a little bit about one of my happenings today. The red and blue lights flashing behind me. It was interesting, that's all I can say. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye-bye for now.